Thanks for joining us Behind the Frontline, a podcast providing timeless solutions to everyday workforce and workplace challenges. Frontline Training Solutions is an express employment professionals company, strategically placed between the workplace and the workforce with professionals standing by, ready to combat your unique challenges. Learn more about what we do at frontlineon.com. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Frontline with Frontline Training Solutions. I'm Nic Dampier, Creative Director, and I'm sitting in the studio with two of my favorite people here. We got Alec McGuire, who is the Training and Event Manager, and also Lorraine Medici, who's the Director of Training and Development.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's get you a little closer to the microphone, Lorraine, so I don't even hear what you're saying.
Yeah, okay.
There we go. And today, we're going to have a great conversation about customer experience. Now, we recently did a webinar on customer experience where the two of you presented to an audience of almost 1,000 people across North America who are really interested in developing and growing their customer experience within their organizations. And I think you both did a fantastic job. So I was hoping real quick, before we dive into this podcast, can you just explain briefly what you presented on and just kind of hit the highlights?
Yeah, I think what we wanted to do is try to pull maybe 3 big nuggets to get things going, right, Alec? And so we use the CEO as an acronym. Do you want to share a little bit about what those stand for?
Yeah, sure. So easy to remember, right? Easy to remember acronym CEO: consistency, empathy, and ownership. They don't have to be in that order, but it's easier to remember in that order. Yeah. Essentially, those are, I guess you could say, the 3 pillars of how to create a great customer experience.
Exactly. And our whole goal was, first of all, to make it easy to remember, something that you could implement right away, just choosing one of those pieces, and really starting to focus on looking at how we can move forward and getting that intertwined in your culture.
Yeah, well, you guys did a fantastic job. It was a really good webinar. I encourage all of you to go check it out. It's free on our archive at frontlineon.com. And the title of the webinar was Pretty Good Isn't Good Enough. And so when we were thinking of what to title this webinar, that seemed to pop to the top. So when you hear that phrase, pretty good isn't good enough, what's the first example that comes to your mind, like either as a customer or as a leader?
Yeah, if you want me to go first, for me, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, nobody really rants or raves about pretty good. You know, pretty good doesn't earn a loyal customer base necessarily.
Yeah, that's true.
It's kind of a meh kind of experience. It's like, it's okay. And, you want people talking about your business, but you don't want them talking like that. Yeah. Right? They're going to talk about that. It's like, it's okay. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, somebody was recommending, we were talking about different restaurants in our training class. Somebody was bringing that up. And one person went, it's okay. Would I recommend it? Maybe not. I'm like, they just recommended not to go there by saying that. Right? So pretty good is really subpar. And if that's what you're aiming for, that's what you're going to put out. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, when you think about your brand as a company, trying to develop like what story you're going to tell as a company brand, the truth is that people are already sharing a story about your company.
That's right.
And it's either good or it's bad.
That's right.
And so I can't remember a lot of places where I was like, it was all right.
Yeah.
I'll either go back or I won't go back.
Right.
But you do remember the ones that were remarkable. And so when we think about the webinar emphasized that the customer experience or CX must be more than a department. It needs to be like live in the culture. So how do you recognize when CX is truly embedded versus when it's still just treated as a nice to have?
Yeah, I think it's because you see it all the way through the culture. From the moment you walk into a company, that first few seconds. They say that, our brain makes 11 judgments in the first 7 seconds. And, are you greeted with a smile? Are you looking at the person's eyes? Are you addressing them like good morning or good afternoon? How can I help you? I mean, I'm thinking about Chick-fil-A. One of the things we did in the webinar was try to pull companies who do really well in consistency, empathy, and ownership. And Chick-fil-A is a great one. They literally are outside of that window saying hello. People remember that, right? Mm-hmm. So it starts from the moment somebody walks in all the way through their experience, whether it's a quick transaction or it's a returning event. I think that's important.
Absolutely. No matter who from that organization that you are interacting with, it is a consistently great customer experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you have to be able to define those behaviors for people. You can't just say, hey, we need everybody smiling. It's much more about understanding the why behind it and reminding people they're also customers and what it feels like for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned Chick-fil-A, and we have a local Chick-fil-A maybe 1.5 miles away from the office here. And there was a period of time where I went so often that they called me out by name when I drove up. Yeah. They recognized me.
Hey, Nick, you're back.
I called my wife and said, I think I need to stop coming here. They're
better to hire you.
Yeah. They know me by name. There was one girl who no longer works there who said, hey, it's good to see you again. How's the business going?
Okay.
Like, she knew who I was. It was weird. But very appreciative of them and their great customer experience. But we talked about one of the things you just mentioned. I want to dive more into how to equip ownership. Like, how do we teach that? We that's one of the key behaviors. And when you're working with organizations at Frontline Training Solutions, how do you help people take ownership of the experiences rather than just pointing at someone else or maybe the process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I have something, but if you want to jump in.
I'll let you go first.
Okay. Here's what that's coming to my mind, first of all, is that we have had so many requests in the last 2 years for customer service training. It is crazy. It's like got to be number 1 or number 2 as for companies of all shapes and sizes asking for, we need customer service training for our internal or external team. And what I realize is that a lot of times they're looking for a checkoff box, Nick, where they just like, you just fix them, make them better. But it's got to be more than just a drive-through training. It's got to be something that's spoken about, at least once a month in some kind of meeting setting where people are either calling shout outs of peers who are doing it really well or examples of what they experience. It's just got to be continually talked about. So it's always in the forefront. It cannot just be a department. It can't just be a single initiative.
Right. Absolutely. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, taking ownership and practicing great customer service internally to each other on the team is also a huge part of that. And any customer going to a business, I think, can very easily tell whether or not, CX is kind of a priority within an organization based on how its employees will interact with each other.
That's a really great point.
Yeah. Can you give an example of what that would look like?
So I'll start with a negative example. This is when I was at a grocery store. I was at the deli, and I was observing a employee chastise another employee in front of me, the customer, and I saw the embarrassment on his face, and I remember thinking to myself, this is just not a good look for the business. It's not a good look for that employee. I wonder maybe how they treat that employee when no customers are around.
Yeah.
Right. Versus consistently, when we have guests who come to our office for the first time, whether they are job candidates or associates, whether they are trainees, whatever it happens to be, it's very consistently often that they remark how happy everyone looks to be working here and how kindly we treat each other and just how kind of like bright and happy it is here.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's it's a very great, visible, tangible example from the outside looking in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think the reason that we behave that way is we are constantly talking about it. We're constantly either, pulling shout outs and when I hear a shout out about, what you do or what you do, Nic, it makes me feel good. It's like, that's so cool. Yeah. But if it's just, not a priority, you're not going to see it from the beginning through the end.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, like I said, it's, when you think about your employer brand, people are telling that story. And if they can tell that your office is not happy or not taking care of each other or not nice to each other, like they're going to be able to tell that you can't take care of them as well. Yeah. I think back to my time in the Navy, and this story popped into my mind. Maybe I blacked it out. I don't know. It's popped into my mind as we were talking, where I worked in the chapel at Naval Station Norfolk, in Norfolk, Virginia. And I remember there was this main office of all of us who were there to provide customer service and help to any service member or service member's family member who would come in seeking counseling. And so oftentimes we'd have a lot of people who came in very grieved, very stressed, very anxious, who needed to talk to a chaplain for whatever reason that was. And so our job was to make sure that we brought them back and helped them and provided any sort of service for them. And so I remember we're in a bay of like 6 people, and I'm sitting in the back, right? And then this young Navy young lady who had only been there for a couple weeks, this woman walked in and she was in tears, shaking. She said that she needed to talk to somebody. She needed to talk to a chaplain. She needed something. And I'm watching this interaction happen. And this girl popped up and said, that's not our problem. That's your problem. And the lady just like ran out, like crying. And I'll never forget that feeling, that look of someone on their face when like you provided such a bad customer service experience for somebody.
No empathy, right?
Right. So we chased after her. We took care of her. Okay. But yeah, no empathy. And that was one of the CEO things. So maybe we could talk a little bit more about empathy and how that can show up in the workplace, especially internally versus externally.
Yeah. That made me think of a time when I went to go do a training at an organization, and the training was set up in their cafeteria, and I was just waiting for some of the employees to show up. And to the right of me was a couple of big tables where probably third and first shift people were just either finishing their shift or starting it. And in front of me was a door, and the door opened, and a gentleman walked out. And you could tell he was a new employee. And because he's looking around and he's just like, I don't know where we're supposed to go. And I started watching the table of employees. And all those employees just looked at that guy. Nobody got up, said, hey, can I help you? Because obviously they knew he was new to some extent. And I just went, well, fine, I'll just go do it, And then finally somebody came in after him and said, hey, are you Joe? And he went, yep, I am. He said, okay, let me just take you out to the plant. There was no introduction. There was no welcome mat present. And I just felt, there's no way this guy's going to hang around. And it's just like, it should be a natural thing. Like, oh, somebody's lost, somebody's unsure, let's get up and help them. So, but if it's not part of the culture, in other words, this is an expectation. You work here, you think differently about things. So,
absolutely. What do you think are some of the common reasons or excuses that leaders might have for, like, what's holding them back from striving for great rather than just settling for good enough?
I mean, I think sometimes there's a misconception of customer service, like, oh, it's another thing we got to do, and we got things to get out or services to provide. It as opposed to just thinking about it as the DNA of your organization, that is as important, if not more important, than the services and products that you provide. What are your thoughts?
I mean, what comes to mind for me is a big barrier that I feel like we see a lot is just a misalignment of values, personal values, with those of the mission of the organization.
Yeah.
And so maybe at that point it is kind of a deeper issue, but because ultimately if someone's heart isn't in their work, that will kind of show, I think, in the experience that they deliver to their customer, whether that's an internal or external customer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a very narrow way of thinking about business.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, I got a service to provide. I have product that needs to be either manufactured or getting out to their customers, as opposed to looking at the holistic look of an organization and recognizing it's not just that piece.
Right. Yeah. I often think about, the future and what the future holds for me. And I've made this comment before that, if I'm looking at what retirement in 20 years, and when I think about that, I'm not going to look back and say, man, we had a really good sales quarter in 2025.
It's a really good point.
I'm going to think like I made some friends and I helped some people. And so you're right. I think we can get stuck in a narrow-minded view of business, but I also think we're missing the point a lot of the time.
That's a really, really good point. Who's going to actually remember that quarter? Mm-hmm. Right? It's like Angelo, I can't remember her name. I'm sorry.
Maya
Angelou, who said people remember the how you made them feel. And so, yeah, I mean, just think about that. That's that whole idea of branding. I want even if I can't service you in a way that you expected, I'm still want to make sure I didn't burn a bridge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kindness is free.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
We talked a lot about in the webinar as well, empathy and consistency. And what do you think the relationship between empathy and consistency in delivering experience? Can one succeed without the other?
No.
I love that, Alec.
No, it can't. And the reason why, going back to kind of what I was talking about earlier, is that if it is not a consistently empathetic experience that the customer is having, depending on maybe who from your organization they are interacting with, right? If they're interacting with Lorraine and she's delightful, but they're interacting with Alec and he's a jerk, then that's going to kind of negate the good experience, right? True. And so if it's not a consistently empathetic experience, just to refer back to these terms, it's not going to work.
It's a very good point. They'll remember the bad experience even over the good experience. Always. That's right. The brain will always remember, because it's basically saying, be careful. It's alerting us. So, I mean, I think there was a statistic once that said you will have to 16 times more you'll remember bad experiences over good experiences. So, yeah, it's the old one bad apple spoils the lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, let's say, I mean, we all have bad days. Things happen. There's been times where we talk a lot about above the line, below the line.
That's right.
And so, yeah, I might have you talk about that in a second. There's some days where I'll show up and, regardless, whatever that may be, I could be below the line.
Sure.
And I could react negatively to somebody.
Yeah.
Let's say that were to happen. I don't want someone to remember that one bad experience over the other experiences that I've tried to be positive and kind. What do you think separates the organizations that recover well from those that lose trust? Like, what does authentic recovery look like, and how do you build that muscle of empathy and consistency and ownership?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really good that you brought that up, because we're all human. And sometimes our best selves don't show up 5 days a week if we're just talking about work. And so if we have a culture that is open to feedback, and personally, I mean, we talk about this all the time in our culture, that it's very, very important to be able to give feedback, receive feedback. But even if it's just something that you recognize yourself, let's say later in the day, you're like, I probably could have handled that better or differently, right? Is having the humility and vulnerability to go back to that person or send an email back to a customer and say, I don't feel like I handled that well, and I just want to make sure that I followed up with you. That's going to go a long way. Is that vulnerability to recognize, I fell short with our value of having a great customer experience. Any thoughts
absolutely.
on that, Alec?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Empathy is not just, I guess, caring about others, right? Part of empathy is being able to be vulnerable, to be able to admit maybe when we were wrong. Certainly, a big part of empathy is being able to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, or at least try to, right?
Absolutely.
And so maybe thinking back, like, oh, hey, maybe I didn't handle that very well. Definitely, maybe acknowledging that to that customer and doing what you can to kind of make it right.
Well, and I'm just thinking about, there's been times where I know I've come to you and I went, I don't think I apologize for XYZ, I'm sorry. And that gives you an opportunity to be empathetic, because there's been times maybe when you,
Exactly.
right? So you learn empathy by being empathetic towards others and understanding and including that feedback piece to it.
Oh, that's so good. A few minutes ago, I mentioned the above the line, below the line, which is a model in a few of our trainings, but specifically purpose-driven leadership training. And how do you think, maybe you can walk through what that model means, but how do you think that would play into kind of this topic of creating a positive customer service environment or experience internally for leaders?
I think we would agree. It's just a wonderful model. It's a model that's been around a while, but I remember that when I learned about it, it kind of made me go, whoa, that was like, we have verbiage now to explain it. Basically, we know that typically the brain is going to have more of a negative experience under stress. It either wants to fight or flight. And so the three roles that we could be involved in below the line when we get stressed is either being a victim, where we hear a lot of I language, there's very low energy, don't know what to do, there's almost a sense of paralysis. Or you go more to the villain role, where you're deflecting, you're pointing, you're blaming, and you're not really looking at your perspective and what your role is. And the third role below the line is it's a self-serving hero. The word can throw you off by calling it a hero, but it's much more self-serving. I'm going to jump in and take care of something because I can do it faster, quicker, better, or I do it because I want some kind of an image. And so if we recognize, and I can't tell you how many, if I could have $1 every time I went to Alec and went, oh, I'm feeling like a villain right now, it helps him then know where I'm at, not to fix it for me, but to be empathetic and say, what's going on? Right? What can I do to help you? The above the line is what we want to strive for. So by Alec having asked me that, he's having me think, what's another perspective?
Yeah, I think I'm kind of empowering you to take some ownership there.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the opposite of a villain is a challenger. And that's kind of what you're doing, right? Yeah. And the opposite of a victim is the creator. What can you do when you're feeling like everything feels overwhelmed?
Even baby steps.
Yes, yep. Those baby steps go a long way. And then the opposite of a hero is coaching.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we think about that model and how that's played out, do you have any examples of how you've seen that kind of play out in some of the organizations, maybe some of the leaders that have come through our training, especially when it comes to providing just a really good leadership experience for the people that they lead? Because that's part of customer service as well, right? Being a good leader to somebody.
Oh, of course. Of course. So I'm thinking about empathy again. And I'm thinking about when a leader is not open to hearing where somebody is struggling, why they might be struggling. A lot of times leaders can get very, again, narrow focused, and it's like, we got to get this done. It's that movement. And so they don't want to stop the train and the momentum, and by saying, I just want you to do it. Right. So an empathetic leader is going to stop and go, let's hang on for a minute. We're going to slow the train down a minute. I know you're struggling. What's going on? Right. That momentary few minutes to be empathetic and serve your subordinate is going to carry things so much further.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Well, in that case, the empathy was missing, right? I mean,
yes.
Really kind of something that we talked about in the webinar is that if the consistency or the empathy or the ownership, if any one of them is missing, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter if we're talking about internal or external CX.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's the first thing that came to mind as you were describing it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, another piece is ownership. Is good leaders will admit their wrongs and say something like, you know what? At the time, I thought this was the best course of action. I realized I probably didn't put a lot of thought into that. And I realized we've wasted some time, and that's on me. That's me taking that ownership. Here's where I'd like to shift our trajectory to go into a different area. And by modeling that is going to carry so much more weight. When leaders can be vulnerable and humble enough to go, I missed the mark on that, others are going to want to follow that.
Yeah. When we talked about building a culture of customer experience and ownership, where do you think that falls within the organization? Like, who does that start with?
It starts at the top.
Absolutely.
I think, of course, it's an organization-wide thing, but it definitely starts at the top. If the leadership does not exemplify those values, it trickles down.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I think it's very apparent, and I'm very grateful to work in a place where our leadership, does very consistently practice those values, and I think it shows. It shows to our guests.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some examples of what that looks like for you? And then maybe some other examples of how you've seen some leadership really exemplify like good customer experience for their team.
Maybe some kind of more abstract examples that come to mind. I'll just refer to my boss, Nathan. He is always ready to give me the benefit of the doubt if, let's say, maybe I missed something that he was waiting on from me. I would say that he's done a great job as a leader, empowering me to take ownership of customer experience in so many different ways, whether I'm interacting with training participants, whether I'm interacting with HR folks who I interface with a lot. I would say also, so we've talked about the ownership piece. We've talked about maybe the empathy piece, right? Nathan has always been a very empathetic boss, made it very clear to me that he, cares about me as a person. Obviously, like I said, he's empowered me to succeed, I think personally and professionally, just through his mentorship, through his wisdom, but also just in how he carries himself and how he leads us as a team. So there it is, right? Consistently, he is a very empathetic leader who, yes, takes ownership of his role, and in doing so empowers us to take ownership of
our roles,
of our roles, and ultimately the customer experience.
Yeah. And he does that consistently. It's not like I hope I catch him on a good day. You doesn't matter. He shows up.
He is steadfast.
Yeah, he really, really is.
Yeah. Now let's think about organizationally, our entire company and maybe some other companies that you've seen. Like, what are some good examples of how you've seen other leaders just like exemplify really good customer experience? Because not once in that last scenario did I hear pizza party or, I think that's a lot of the times that we hear and we see companies kind of revert back to like, well, maybe if I just give them one good experience, that will cover up all of the negative experiences that they're dealing with.
That's we were actually just talking about this week in one of our classes. It's like people kind of roll their eyes and go, oh, another pizza party or, a gift, a gas card. They want a relationship.
Yeah.
They want that sense of what, I mean, just listening. I mean, of course I know Nate, but just like listening it from your lens, it just solidifies again that it wasn't anything he gave you tangibly. His time, his wisdom, his listening ear, his ability to empower you, and not, I know also from that, the same thing. It's like, what do you think you want to do? It's almost like he wants to empower you to do that problem solving and support you at the same time.
So it almost sounds like what you're describing, though, is a coaching leader.
Yes.
And so we also have a course called Developing Coaching Leaders. Yep. And so it sounds like almost in order to be consistent and have empathy and have ownership, really what you want to try to be is a good coaching leader that develops other leaders. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what that could look like.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of my biggest passions. I know Alec has been through the course as well, but the key to what makes that work well is every leader has to be on board on that. And that, again, from what Alex said, it comes from the top down. In other words, the foundation, the essence, that whole piece of what holds up your organization, whether it's service or products that you're making, has to have these intrinsic and really, I'm suffering here with some words here, but some really powerful traits, character traits of the organization. It's not that we sell hamburgers, right? Or we sell chicken. You get an experience when you go to Chick-fil-A. It's the experience you get, or, I know it sounds a little silly, but people talk about it all the time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I fully agree.
So I don't know if that really answered your question or any other thoughts on that, but.
No, I mean, yeah, I fully agree that, I always remember back to my wife and I were talking to our 12-year-old the other night about my experience in college. And there was this one barista at Starbucks who every day, kind of like Chick-fil-A, like every day I'd walk in, and I saw her every day for 3 years. And every day I would walk in and she have my drink waiting for me. She'd call me out by name. She'd say, "How are you doing today?" And I would pay her, and then I'd walk out and I'd see you tomorrow. And I mean, I was young. I was, 19, 20 years old, but I'm as a 40-year-old man now. Like, I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember what she looks like. I remember that experience, and I'll carry it with me.
Yeah.
So we know that in order to have a really good externally customer experience for our customers, we need to model what that looks like internally as well for our staff. So let's say that there's leaders who are listening to this, or HR generalists or whatever, and they're, what's one bold challenge or change that you are challenging participants who are listening to this to, like, this is something you could do tomorrow to dramatically, or even baby steps, like you mentioned, increase your customer experience internally. What would that look like?
I would frame it as a personal challenge to the employees of the organization to examine, just take between consistency, empathy, and ownership. Take one of those areas and really take a good hard look about how you can do one part of your job better in that area. Maybe it's your tone of voice, how you, or, your facial expression as you're interacting with people. Maybe it's that you all too often don't give your coworkers the benefit of the doubt, right? Not having some empathy and maybe thinking of what might be going on in their life. But just starting with some baby steps. What's just one or two things that I can do better in this area?
Yeah. And I think the baby steps are within the nuggets, right? So even if it's like, I'm going to be a better listener, which is going to draw me to be more empathetic and open up my perspective, right? Even if that's all I'm going to work on. And usually when I coach people, I'm like, we're starting with baby steps, because human nature does not want to change. It's comfortable where it's at. And now you're making me kind of rub against the grain there. I also think what's important is that if an organization is truly going to take this on, they got to do some kind of a pulse check. So individually is a great way to start. Another way is to start doing some kind of surveys.
Yeah.
Internally, how does it look? And then maybe, reach out to customers or the base of their customers to go, how are we doing? And we got to look at that at least, once a year to be checking, setting some metrics to go. I work with one company who their metric is to get a 95% customer service good scores. And this last year they got 92, and they're like, that's not good enough. Isn't that interesting? That we missed the mark. But now a lot of companies would be happy with 92%, but they're like, that's not good enough. We need to figure out, why did we miss the boat between 92 and I think the previous couple of years were even 96. So for them,
where's the deficit there? Yeah.
We're sliding this way. Not so. I commend them. It's like, do we got new people that just haven't been onboarded with this, or are we not talking enough about it? But I think you got to be, and if you're going to do a survey, be prepared to open up the Pandora's box and deal with it.
Yeah, and that's where the ownership comes in.
Yeah, that's
right.
right. That's right.
Because really, when you're taking ownership, you are kind of acknowledging, maybe that you made a mistake, or that I'm acknowledging that I maybe didn't handle this well.
Yeah.
And it takes some humility to do that.
It really does, and that vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
But if it's missing,
if that's not respected as a great quality trait, and the top leaders are not showing that, it's the trickle down. They're not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. You mentioned assessments and surveys. And I mean, that's something that we can help with at Frontline Training Solutions. First thing that popped into my mind is a 360 evaluation. What other surveys or assessments would you suggest they reach out to us about if they're interested in that for their organization?
Yeah, I think 360s are much more individual based. They can serve a purpose. They're sometimes a little bit more implemented when you've got one or two people who are really struggling and they need to have that feedback. Personally, I think what we like to do is do an intake, because I still think it's always the best thing to just pop something from the shelf and go, here.
Absolutely.
So we want to sit down. We want to talk about, what are you seeing? What's going well? How is this affecting your business case? Like, what is it affecting? Your losing customers, etc. So I think from there, then we would look at some other options. Sometimes it's customizing a complete survey.
Yeah. When we think about ownership, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't know how I'm going to get my leader to listen to this, to hear this. My gut instinct is to say, well, ownership is actually starting with you. You exemplify what that looks like. What are some other ways that, we can lead up with something like this? If it's not being displayed from the top down, but we believe in this organization, we believe in the mission, we believe in the vision. We also believe that the potential and what it can be. But maybe leadership is just not falling in line with that. Maybe they're not exemplifying what that could look like. Well, what are some ways that someone could lead up with that?
Any thoughts on that?
Practice them yourself. Practice those 3 pillars yourself as much as you can. Try to influence your colleagues to do the same. When they do the same, acknowledge that and call it out, shout it out. Ultimately, there is a business case to be made for good customer experience, internal and external. And if nothing else, a leader should see that, right?
Well, and that's
a numbers only person.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say. If you've got somebody who's all about the moolah, which most leaders are not in business to just, have a little side gig. And I respect that. You got to show evidence and say, here, I just want to let you know, this was 3 testimonials that we just got. Look at our Google reviews.
And we are in the day and age where online reviews can truly affect
absolutely
revenue for a business. I mean, it's people, I don't know about you, I certainly make purchasing decisions after reading reviews. I'm heavily influenced by them, word of mouth and otherwise.
And isn't it interesting when we do look at a Google review, and let's say they're even a 4.2 star review, and you open it up, the first thing I go look at are the negative reviews.
I scroll looking for 1 or 2 stars.
And let's just say, you got 10, great, love it, you're amazing. And then I read 2 that didn't have a good experience. Right away, I feel a little bit of And see, again, that's our brain going, be careful. It wants to go into that protection mode. And again, that is such evidence to go, yeah, these are nice, but those way more. Those 2 way more than those 10. So go, I'm concerned. I am an ambassador for this company, and it's hard for me to be able to justify our behaviors if this is how people feel.
Yeah. And if you are listening and you are part of an organization that might have a few 1 or 2 star reviews, I know from experience and just SEO and marketing, still go respond to them. Absolutely. If you haven't yet, go respond to them, apologize for their bad experience or their bad product, invite them to give you a call, try to rectify that experience, because seeing that comment under a 1 or 2 star review makes the difference rather than leaving it alone.
Yeah.
It makes a difference for new potential customers. So let's say that, maybe someone's listening and they're like, oh God, we've got 98% 1-star reviews. We've got a horrible word of mouth, experience, but we want to do better,
Yeah.
But it's going to be a long road, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to encourage them?
Total stop everything, get all stakeholders from the top, starting with the top leadership, mid-manager, and really it's going to be an initiative. It's not something we just go, let's go to a training. It's an initiative.
Like a line item. It's got to be.
It's got to be, we just got to just be bold enough, humble enough to just sit down, and we're going to have to just chunk it. You may even have to do some kind of, brand marketing about, matter of fact, I just saw a sign by some company or some storefront that said, I know which one too, brand new leadership and friendlier faces.
Oh.
And I went, that's a message.
Yeah.
Right? It's
a response.
They got some bad stuff. And you may have to just be humble enough to go, yeah, this is it. We let this go too long, and we're going to have to just start. It's like almost dismantling a home that is just structurally, and it's like, plow it away. Let's start all over.
That's great. That's great feedback. Yeah, that's good. So, our goal at Frontline Training Solutions is to develop people, inspire growth, and unlock potential. And a big part of that is developing your leadership, developing your coaching, and developing your, helping you develop good customer experience within your organization. And so we want to help you do that at Frontline Training Solutions. You can reach out to us at frontlineon.com. Also follow the contact us link in the caption of this podcast, and watch the webinar with Alec and Lorraine, because they did a fantastic job. And they walked through some other companies as well about experience or examples of good customer experience within those companies. And so go check it out, reach out to them, say hello. Thank you, Alec, for joining us in the studio. Thank you, Lorraine. Great job as always. And we'll see you next time on Behind the Frontline.